Hey everybody, you've got the management here. Sorry it has been so long since I uploaded a video, but I have been working really hard on this one. There's a lot of detail, so strap in. There are some thematic connections, I'm going to say starting with 3 between the 4 small boxes. Jon Collins-Black is all about thematic connections, and there's treasure inside. I'm going to go over the 3 that I've identified so far at a very high level. You're going to need to do more research to fully dig out the details. Not going to do all that work for you, but I wanted to share this knowledge with everybody so you can start looking into it. So at the beginning of part 2, he has a special introduction for part 2. And these 2 quotes at the beginning. Being able to go beyond the information given to figure things out is one of the few untarnishable joys in life. I think here he's referring to just in general how satisfying it feels to not know how to do something, to work hard at it, and then master it, and you learn it, and that figuring out process is just really rewarding. Jerome Bruner was a psychologist and studied early childhood education from a psychological perspective. The 2 highlights of his quote being going beyond the information, I said the there twice, oops, to figure things out. Hold on to those tidbits for the section about him. And then also Leonardo DaVinci's "The noblest pleasure is the joy of understanding." Again, I think that goes back to the first quote about figuring things out and how rewarding it is to teach and learn something new just based on your own experience. And then finally, there's an overarching theme of Japan across all 4 boxes. He mentions Japan in almost every chapter by name. All right, so Jerome Bruner had 5 keys to his theory of learning. Learning through discovery is problem solving to arrive at a solution independently that results in greater cognitive stickiness. So because you arrive at a solution, you have built neural pathways that help you hold on to that information easier. His modes of representation: inactive, iconic, and symbolic. Inactive being learning by doing, iconic, pictures, diagrams, visual aids, and then symbolic, words, math formulas, abstract ideas, etc. I personally have grouped this into the yellow group and the green group because I think they relate to each other. So you can see how learning through discovery and modes of representation go together and using tools to figure out a problem. And then on the more theoretical side, you have the spiral curriculum, the readiness to learn, as well as scaffolding. The spiral curriculum is about learning the same thing over time with each iteration growing in depth of complexity. I know when I was going through school, I remember every year you advance a little bit more in the same subjects, but there's also a little bit of overlap, right? So it gets more advanced, but you overlap, so you continually build on what you're learning. Your readiness to learn. The importance of understanding the basics before advancing. So that's that overlap. Again, you have to make sure that you understand the end of 7th grade math before you start the beginning of 8th grade math. So in 8th grade, they cover everything that they covered in 7th grade all over again, but faster and at a higher level. Scaffolding. Think of it as training wheels. You add support to aid learning when needed, and then you remove it as the subject is mastered. I think of this like bean counting. I remember in maybe 2nd or 3rd grade when we were doing adding our times tables, there was an egg carton tray. Obviously has a dozen subsections in it. Then you would get beans, and you'd put 2 beans in section 1, 2 beans in section 2, 2 beans in section 3, multiplication table, 6 beans, 3 with 2 of them each. So that's kind of what I mean when it's training wheels. Obviously, after you've mastered the concept, you don't need the egg tray with the beans in it anymore. So how does Jon Collins-Black use these throughout his book? We already know that he has said that he has made boxes that appeal to all different kinds of learning. He's made boxes that appeal to all different kinds of people. He's made sure to have a variety of prizes, so everything seems accessible to everyone. Did I mention the connection between 5 with the number of boxes and 5 methods of learning? So, learning through discovery. This is a direct quote. If you want to find the treasure boxes, you will have to travel out your door and go and search for them. Period. Active discovery. Inactive representation. Going boots on the ground. Certain clues are only going to make sense once you're on location. Iconic. The puzzles, stories, images, etc. he has given us to point towards clues. Symbolic. Application of what you have learned about throughout reading the book to construct a solve. He has said multiple times, read this book and read it over again. Right? So that's the spiral curriculum, the continual learning path, and every time that you read it, you apply something that you didn't know before you started the book last time. Readiness to learn. Direct quote again, if you find a topic or story captivating or intriguing and your instinct is to go research further, I invite you to do so. Now, the fact that doesn't have an opening quotation is my fault. However, Canva, you need to get your shit together and fix this I capitalization thing. Regardless of whenever you type an I, it always puts it in capital if it's the first letter of a word. This is not title case. This is just regular. I's can be lowercase. Canva, get it together. Thanks for coming to my TED Talk. Scaffolding. Another quote, the attributes you need to find our treasure are really many of the ones illustrated through the chapters in this book. Learn from these stories, maybe even apply their teachings. So I think you're drawing the connection now between Bruner and Jon Collins-Black and how he wants you to apply these methods of learning to your treasure hunt. Okay, so what about Leonardo da Vinci? How does he relate to A, Jon Collins-Black and There's Treasure Inside, and B, Bruner and his theories on education? Leonardo da Vinci, the guy who was named after a Ninja Turtle, he was a Renaissance artist, and he was fascinated with the connections between math, art, and science. We all know who Da Vinci is. There is so much more about Da Vinci to learn than what I can possibly tell you in a video, and I'm sure there's enough that correlates with the entirety of There's Treasure Inside that could be a topic all on its own. But for this video, we're going to keep it moderately high level. Okay, so the golden ratio, it's relative to Bruner's spiral curriculum, but this is the key highlights. It explores beauty and harmony through proportion and symmetry. The Mona Lisa and the Last Supper demonstrate his ability to combine creativity with precision and the influence of geometry and perspective. Sacred geometry. We're going to talk about this a lot more, so just hold on with me. I didn't name it. It revealed the inherent existence of math and geometry in nature. It was a subject that Da Vinci was obsessed with. It is also one of the greatest arguments both for and against the existence of God, whatever God it is that you believe in. And then we have engineering innovation. He was the father of engineering. His first designs for flying machines, helicopters, bridges, weapons, and specifically gears, which were the first documented exploration of the function of mechanics. That's your iconic representation. Then you have codes and ciphers, which is your symbolic representation. I think we all know how codes and ciphers apply to There's Treasure Inside. Da Vinci was the inventor of mirror script. He was the master of hidden messages in art, and there were all sorts of implied narratives that could be extracted. If you are not familiar with Dan Brown as an author, and specifically the Da Vinci Code and Angels and Demons, I highly recommend you get on it. A, the home of Brown could be Dan Brown, and B, although that is a fictional story and fictional characters, everything regarding the art, architecture, history, all of those things exist exactly how and where he describes them. Dan Brown just built a narrative around those items as they exist. All right, so Da Vinci and the golden ratio. So as you can see, the golden ratio is basically a perfect square, which is repeated into infinity based on a perfect quarter arch, 25% pi piece of a circle within it, and it just repeats in that spiral to infinity. The symbol for the golden ratio is the circle with a line through the middle, and the mathematical equivalent is 1.618, much like pi would be 3.14 forever and ever and ever and ever. It's also known as the divine proportion, and it appears in nature as well as architecture and art. It provides structure, balance, and harmony in all of those applications. Naturally, it occurs in the nautilus, which we have a picture of here. The nautilus is bisected in that example. Above that is the mathematical representation of parts, and then the visual representation of the spiral to the right, and then just the squares and how they outline the Mona Lisa's face there at the top. Also known as the Fibonacci spiral. The Fibonacci sequence is a mathematical sequence that repeats into infinity. It also matches up with this spiral. I highly recommend that you Google the Fibonacci spiral so you can go deeper down that rabbit hole. We're just taking it to the visual proportions in this video. Need I say more? I mean, look at how those align with the box. Now, the box is a bit skewed, so I did have to skew the golden ratio to match the shape of the box, since this is shot at a downward perspective and isn't directly front on. But as you can see, they align. We see alignment in both elements of the photography, but also in the physical structure of the box. The placement of the items are very intentional, and to prove this to you, I'm going to show you an example of where the golden ratio has not been applied. Because when something is man-made, the golden ratio is applied intentionally in order to make it work. So I think the artists, both Seth Gould and the photographer, they were instructed by Jon Collins-Black to ensure that when they set up the box for the photography, that these elements aligned in this way. That's why I think it works out so well. Now, here's an example of where it doesn't line up so well. As you can see, the space aligns, the overall rectangle aligns, but the spiral doesn't seem to have any connectivity with the other elements of the box. So the forest fin box is kind of my anti-proof of the golden ratio doesn't always align when you want it to. Fear not, there's some other things that we can talk about with it. First off, this box is modeled after Hob Nail Safes. Hob Nail Safes were the first safes invented to protect against fire. Safes previously were all wooden, right? So the invention of a metal safe was really important for documents and things that could burn and perish in fire. Now, all of these boxes are made of metal, so none of them we have to worry about, but the particular use of hobnail could imply that this is hidden somewhere where wildfires are common. Hobnail specifically refers to the nails with a thick round head. In the picture to the right with the boots, you can see where hobnails used to also be used for traction in the bottom of hiking boots in rocky and icy areas. Technology for that has advanced, thankfully, because that still seems very slippery to me. So the golden ratio doesn't align. What's your point here? there's other things that can align. Again, I had to skew these images because they were not taken straight on and we don't have exact dimensions of the box. So I'm doing my best here. We have this elongated diamond, or what is two triangles butted up against each other. Now, in the top picture, it looks very elongated, but as you can see, as you adjust the perspective, and granted this is not perfect, it becomes more of an equilateral triangle, again, doubled up. You can also see this shape in the center of the six-pointed star, or the Star of David. I looked for evidence that Jon Collins-Black, of his religion, his heritage being Jewish. I could not find anything. He has pulled some magic Bitcoin dude stuff and largely scrubbed the internet of any personal information about himself. So that is not the connection I'm trying to make here, but more about the geometric shapes. So you've got this diamond shape, right? And within that diamond shape, you can have 4 smaller diamonds or 8 triangles, which you can see the repetitive shape is just going to keep repeating and repeating and repeating. We're going to get more into that in a minute. But what it ultimately creates is a 6-sided pyramid, which in turn could also be inverted, like you see at the Louvre. Now, I know this is all getting a little bit, there's Sunny in Philadelphia here with the murder board thing in the red and everything. So I'm gonna bring it all full circle for you guys. Just remember, a hexagonal pyramid is often symbolic of balance, harmony, and stability. So now we have sacred geometry, the blueprints of the universe. It existed for many years before he began studying it. He is not the inventor of sacred geometry, discoverer of sacred geometry, but both sacred geometry and Platonic solids are what are considered the blueprints of the universe, with sacred geometry being the 2D form and Platonic solids, referencing Plato, being the 3D forms. On the left, we have Archangel Metatron's cube. I'll let you Google who Metatron is. He is not a transformer. Why he's referred to as an archangel, I don't know. I didn't want to get too deep into that, but in his particular instance, he transcends all religion. Anyhow, Metatron's cube is made of 13 circles connected by straight lines converging at the center. It contains every shape that exists in the universe, and those shapes are the building blocks of all physical matter. Same thing with Platonic solids. It's adjacent to sacred geometry, being that it's the 3D form, but these represent all the elements of Earth and are thought to be used to connect with the gods in a spiritual way. We're going to focus on 4 of the 5. The 5th one being Aether or Ether, not really sure how you pronounce that. Its 2D forms are in the picture to the right, also known as a cushion-cut diamond is what it looks like to most people. Aether is not a physical matter, but is more spiritual and is the equivalent to gods what air is to humans. I'm not that spiritual of a person, so I'm not getting too deep into that one because I think it's beyond my understanding. If you can tie all that together and bring ether back together into this, please reach out and let me know how you did it, because I just don't think that's in my capacity to grab. So we have the Platonic solids. You've heard this before: earth, air, fire, water. You've got your tetrahedron, which is a 4-sided triangle. Examples are the pyramids at Giza, and there are also naturally occurring crystals in that formation. Crystals actually occur in all of these formations, so that always applies. Next, we have an octahedron, which is 8-sided. That's based on the hexagon shape, which is a 6-pointed. Then we have the hexahedron, which is the Earth symbol, which is a cube. Why the Earth symbol is not round, we are not referring to Earth as a planet, but Earth as a substance. And it is represented by green. Most common man-made example I can think of is a traditional dice. Now, I will say that I'm not a Dungeons and Dragons person, but I do believe that there are multiple shapes and multiple dice, and that can probably all be tied in with this as well. I don't know anything about Dungeons and Dragons, so somebody else is going to have to do that legwork. And then we have the icosahedron, which is 20-sided and represents water. This is just a dupe of what it says before. Whoops. Anyway, the icosahedron represents water. It's always blue. Something that's interesting is if you combine these light spectrums of red, yellow, green, and blue, it creates white light. I can see a lot of correlations with white light, and there's treasure inside, and prisms, and a whole lot going on there. So there's more to dig into in this aspect. For now, we're just going to leave it at this high-level overview. I do encourage you to check out lisapowers.co, that link at the bottom. These descriptions were pretty much taken word for word from her website because I think she did a great job of explaining the Platonic solids. She also has explanations of their 2D form being sacred geometry, everything that I've covered here, plus more. Great website if you want to dig into that some more. And here we can see Da Vinci's application of the golden ratio, sacred geometry, and the Platonic solids in his famous anatomical sketch, The Vitruvian Man. Give you a minute to look at that and take it all in. You can also see in the original on the right his mirror script writing. All right, and so how does all of this relate to the boxes? As you can see, each box has different things going on with it. Now, I think that there is much more in alignment here, but I just wanted to highlight these top level items to inspire you guys, much like Jon Collins-Black has, to investigate these subjects further and draw your own conclusions. So the Appalachian Trail box, you've got the golden ratio pretty much perfectly used. I do not like the small circular knob at the bottom of the top, but nobody asked me when they were designing it. And again, I think it would just continue to repeat over and over and over, but it's not part of the traditional golden ratio. To the right, the past and future box, although I did skew the image on the right with the green square, you can see that the golden ratio rectangle is not going to apply to the front of the box just because it's a rectangle. But if the side of the box, if it's skewed properly, it fits the one square that could be repeated over and over and over. And also, we know that as a cube. And then we have the Pokemon box that has some interesting patterns going on. With all sacred geometry, you can take an element and repeat it over and over and over. With the Pokemon box, you can see where 1 or 4 circles is repeated over and over and over to get that circular diamond shape there in the middle. And those represent earth, air, fire, and water. Again, I had to skew these. They're not perfect, but I think if we had the exact dimensions and the boxes sitting in front of us and no perspective applied to the photography, then these things would line up a whole lot better than they actually do. Okay, so now what about Japan? In the Forest Fin box, Japan is mentioned in the first line, and it's mentioned many times thereafter. It's mentioned throughout the entire book. The Pokemon box. A, obviously, Pokemon is of Japanese origin, and B, it's a Japanese puzzle box. Pretty easy to make that connection there. The past and future box really is where it steps up a level. The Bitcoin inventor Satoshi Nakamoto is not actually a person. That is a pseudonym for a person. We don't know who the actual inventor is. We already know that Jon Collins-Black is a pseudonym of sorts. He legally has changed his name from John Comer to Jon Collins-Black, so there could be some meaning there. But the Japanese meaning of Satoshi Nakamoto is Satoshi, intelligent history, and Nakamoto, one who lives in the middle. And then there's the Appalachian Footpath box, which I really didn't think I was going to be able to tie it in until I found these examples of Japanese patterns. Specifically with the Appalachian Trail box, you have the arabesque pattern that represents Chinese plants. its origin is of Egypt and it's been adapted. It symbolizes prosperity, longevity, and the continuity of the family tree, aka legacy or the tree of life. This book is one big legacy for Jon Collins-Black. Next, the hobnail pattern is one of the oldest and most recognized designs for Japanese cast iron pots. Pretty cut and dry. And then we have the Pokemon box that has the 3 different patterns that we can see. I'm wondering if there are any other patterns on there. Maybe it's just a matter of getting those patterns to align like a Rubik's Cube that's way more complicated. So the star shape, also known as Asanoha, I am probably not saying that right, but it's a hemp leaves pattern. Jon Collins must get down. It's originally Buddhist, and it symbolizes growth, vigor, and resistance. Kiko is the hexagonal shape, and it represents the tortoise shell. It symbolizes longevity, stability, strength, and solidity. And then Shippo, again, you have that 4 circles overlapping pattern, represents the 7 treasures of Buddhism: gold, silver, lapis, lazuli, agate, coral, pearl, and crystal. Fun fact, this is also the pattern on my bathroom floor, so I look at it a lot. Alright, so that is all I have for you today. I hope you can take some of these concepts and apply them yourself to your search, research them further. Let me know what you find. Don't let me know what you find. Whatever you want to do. You can check out my other videos if you want to learn some more about other topics, and make sure you subscribe to the channel so you can get updates when new videos come out. Have a great day. Happy, happy, joy, joy.